Oh yes, Mario Party 6. The Mario Party that absolutely holds a ton of memories over the past 3 years. It's basically one of the things that's basically shaped me as an overall person. And I really appreciate that for having Mario Party 6 to be around with me for the most part. I'm not treating it as a person, I swear. But seriously, I will have to say, one thing I basically decided out of this was just to basically review all of Mario Party 6's minigames in my own series. That's what 12-year-old me had in mind. And little did I know, it would become such a big thing for me as a person. Because I became so obsessive with trying to do this. And I thought it would be a breeze, since I would just have to make the minigames super simple. But no, they became very hard, because we're talking about 78 minigames here. That is not easy whatsoever. Do you know how hard that is to do? Yeah, try that for yourself. But today is basically taking all those reviews into account and basically ranking all the Mario Party 6 minigames, disqualifying any of the rare minigames. So with that out of the way, let's get started with this massive ranking. Number 78. To absolutely no one's surprise about this entry, number 78 on the entire list, and taking bottom spot on the entire list, is none other than Pitfall. Yeah, it's not even a competition at this point, because basically, this was an obvious last place from the start. For one, you have to choose a rope between 3, and see what happens, and if neither of the players choose it right, they just randomly pick a winner. For one, it's luck already, and 2, it's just basically completely making things completely unfair. And also the fact that it's a dual minigame and the awful presentation, it basically easily makes it the bottom spot on this list. Number 77, Trick or Treat. Same as last minigame, but it rewards you for choosing a taller tree than your opponent. And also basically, I like the atmosphere. However, it is still a luck-based dual minigame. Yippee! And yeah, I hate it. Moving on. Number 76, Strawberry Short Fuse. An absolutely garbage battle minigame. The fact that it's luck-based makes it worse. At least you're dueling frickin' stars on the line. However, this minigame is not just luck-based because it's basically just, well, memory disguises luck, but also the fact that basically it drags on for so long that it just becomes so boring. And also just for the fact that there's just no suspense in the end, just makes it suck. Number 75, Light Breeze, an absolutely garbage 2 vs 2 minigame. It's an L and R button masher, where you have to try to make your windmill go off by basically mashing the L and R button as fast as possible. For one, I think it would have been better if you're actually working with your teammate, which you don't. If you wanted to make it a 2v2, you could have just have it just be 2 separate windmills, 1 for each team. Or if you didn't want to have to do so, you could have just easily made it a free-for-all minigame and called it a day. That's basically the best way you could have described this minigame. It's just a stupid and very bad minigame overall. Number 74, Same as Lame. Another luck-based minigame, yippee! At least it's a free-for-all. However, even if it was a free-for-all, it drags on for so long that it just basically becomes a worthless experience. And also for the bad presentation, it just basically just makes it super boring. I like the fact that you can change your answer and it's a first to 3. However, besides that, it is just so boring. It basically drags on forever. And the fact that it's a luck-based minigame makes things even worse. Number 73, Popstar. The single player mashes the A button rapidly as much as they can, with a team of 3 ground pounds, all to inflate their balloon until it pops. And yeah, it's impossible for the single player to win if they're playing with brutal computers or human players. Either one, it's impossible for the single player to win. Yeah, you can win with hard computers, but brutal? Yeah, no. I will just say, I can at least prefer this over luck. Number 72, Gondola Glide. All you just do is mash A or B in separate times. And basically, it just comes down to awful timing, because it's so hard to just time it correctly. And also, play this with actual human players, because hard computers, they will just win every single time. It basically just makes it unfair at some points. And also, I will have to say, it just basically sucks overall, because basically, The course never changes itself, but the buttons do. However, it's also just the fact that it basically just becomes so annoying to time every single time. It just becomes a slug to play. Number 71, Verbal Assault. It's impossible for the 3. They didn't even come close. And I do like the presentation of this minigame. And also, if you're playing this with a normal mic, it's a pretty funny experience. However, if we're talking about physically speaking, that this is it's just bad. That's all I can really say. Not really bad, but it's just not good at all. The lowest of the 2-star minigames. Number 70, Ray of Fright. Good concept, terrible execution. It's basically just going to come down to luck if the team of 3 could win. They'll lose like 90% of the time. They're not complete zero. They want to practice round once, I can remember. However, one practice round will not be enough to convince me that it's not skewed for the single player. Just stupid. Number 69, Trapeze Artist. Luck again! Yippee! No. Just no. At least this minigame ends pretty quickly. Although, it just can come down to luck on where the Goombas go. And also the fact that the cage has a bit of a delay. It's just super annoying to play. This one is our last entry in the bottom 10, to tell you right now. Number 68, Freeze Frame. Basically the same as Trapeze Artist, however, the reaction time is more instantaneous, and it ends way quicker. Basically, that's all I need to say about this minigame. Because it basically is just simply a reaction time minigame, and basically can get very annoying in night mode because the UFOs, they basically move so fast that it's not even worth it to try capturing them. And also the detection is pretty off at points. It's kind of annoying. Number 67, Peer Factor. A luck-based DK minigame. Somewhat. You can at least try to remember where the bananas are and maybe try to strategize for the short term. However, for the most part, it's also going to depend on where your opponents choose, what barrels they choose to go down the pathway. It's just going to come down to luck if you want to say that for yourself. Basically just a pointless DK minigame. It could have been replaced by anything else. Number 66, Treasure Trawlers. An absolutely annoying minigame to play. It's luck combined with the rumble feature, which is pretty creative. However, the way how they use it is just pretty tedious. For one, the rumble feature can be pretty finicky at points, which is just annoying. And two, there's a luck element, where you don't know if you're gonna get a normal treasure chest, golden, or bob. What minigame has you follow the instructions and get screwed over by it? Alright, a Mario Party minigame. Who could have guessed? Number 65, Dizzy Rotisserie. It's the worst Bowser minigame, and for good reason. It is easy. It's easy as shit. That's basically the best way to describe this minigame. If you don't know how to beat this minigame, well, I'm sorry. You gotta go see your eye doctor. Next, number 64, Crate and Peril. Way too easy for the 1. I won 1 or 2 times on the team of 3. However, it is still very easy for the 1 to win most of the time. It basically is designed in a way for the single player to win. Next, number 63, Talkie Walkie. Even with a microphone, it is still easy for the 1. That's all I basically gotta say, because there's little to no substance besides that. Unless the team of 3 can predict what the single player is gonna do. That's the only way they could win. Next, number 62, Black Hole Boogie. It's a button masher. Next, number 61, Banana Shake. It's a button masher. However, there are obstacles, which are hammers. However, they're so hard to avoid that it's basically not worth it and very tedious to get through. Next, number 60, Sumo of Dumo. Basically tedious use of the tank controls. It's very annoying to get through. If you don't know the tank controls immediately, you're just going to lose almost every time. Yeah, it's basically tedious to get through. And there's a minigame later on that is using a better idea for the tank controls. Number 59, Blooper Scooper. Weird name, however, it's kind of annoying. And also, it's partially a button masher. However, it's also a survival minigame. However, the obstacles, they're so common that they're very likely to get you out without you even noticing and without little to no skill. It's kind of annoying if you want to say for yourself. Number 58, Cash Flow. Very boring coin minigame. Both sides are likely going to get most of the coins. Next, number 57, Mass Meteor. it's very easy to dodge the asteroids most of the time because the hitboxes just suck. And also, if both players basically make it to the end, the winner is decided by RNG. At least it requires skill, but that is kinda stupid that they added that in the end. Yeah, it's basically also very hard to tell. And there's also points where it just becomes ridiculous when it comes to dodging the asteroids. Number 56, Wrestling Rapids. Pretty intense in toe keeping. However, the big problem is that it is so long, if you stay in the center 90% of the time, you're likely going to win. And also, there's pretty likely chance that more than one player will make it to the end by the 2 minutes. It basically kind of feels a bit boring in most parts. However, it is pretty toe keeping, I'll at least say that. Number 55, Sink or Swim. It was so close to an alright minigame. However, it's kind of easy for the one, because of just a stupid arbitrary rule. For one, the single player, they can drop mines whenever they want. And 2, each member on the team of 3 has a stamina meter, which basically can get them out very easily if they're not looking. It's very annoying, and it was so close to a 3-star. Heck, this is the last one in the 2-star category, which makes this entry even worse for me. Number 54, Bodybuilder. Basically, one of the laziest minigames in the game. And the reason why it wasn't in the 2-star is because it's alright. It's just simply hitting a box and trying to get the body parts you need. It's basically simple as that. Basically doesn't need any other explanation. However, it would have been a lot more interesting if they tweaked it up a bit. Make it go a bit faster at points. That would have at least had something to fix it. Number 53, Odd Card Out. Spot the difference. Yippee. The definition of mid. The definition of mid indeed. Next, number 52, Tally Me Banana. Flick your control stick around to get onto the barrels and see what you get. And you can get either bananas, a bunch of bananas, or nothing in those barrels. And there's also the chance you can go out with this minigame with absolutely nothing. However, at least I don't have to rely on luck or mashing, unlike the other two. And guess what? This is our last DK minigame. And the fact that we're not even in the top 50. Jeez, DK. Alright, lightning round, because the next 3 minigames are the last 3 of the Mike minigames. And they basically function the same way. So let's get them out of the way. Number 51, Fruit Cocktail. A bit easy for the one, however, it's an alright one. Yeah, forgettable. Number 50, Shoot Your Mouth Off. Basically kind of easy for the one. However, it can be a bit funny at times, and can be a bit balanced at times. However, it's pretty conflicting. Number 49, Word Herd. Basically, just the same thing as the other 2. Kind of easy for the 3. However, does feel more balanced, and basically isn't really frustrating whatsoever or annoying in any shape or form. Just alright. Next! Number 48, Conveyor Bolt. The first one here that has a completely different version in night mode. Pretty interesting, I know. In day mode, the single player is to try to get out the team of 3 on a moving conveyor with spikes on it. However, in night mode, it's completely reversed, as the team of 3 has to try to get the single player. However, the conveyor is turned off, and the spikes are non-existent. And also, the bolts are smaller. Kinda makes sense. It's a good way to make things balanced. However, this is easily one I'll probably never remember in my life. Next! Number 47, Boot Off the Stage. A pretty alright duel minigame. It's basically just dodging the boos, and they basically come at the very same speed as the other. It basically is kind of easy, and can be a bit easy to draw as well. However, it's not really bad. And I'm probably going to forget this minigame exists within a few days, unless I actually get it on the board. Number 46, Tricky Tires. An alright use of the tank controls. It doesn't use them really too bigly, it just uses them in a simplistic way that is understandable. However, some of the obstacles can be a bit of an annoyance. The Thwomp, there is a good chance that you're going to be under there for too long if more than one player is underneath there with you. And also the moving bars, they can be very tedious at points as well. Good controls, tedious objects, I would say. Number 45, Full Tilt. A very alright duel minigame. It's at least generous enough that they give you a checkpoint. In case you fall afterwards, they spawn you back at the checkpoint. However, it's just kind of a tedious minigame at points, and very hard to control. It's just very okay. I'm probably not going to remember it, and I'm gonna go back to forgetting this minigame exists. Number 44, Insectoride. Another kind of strange battle minigame, I'm gonna tell you right now. It's pretty nice that they give you 4 entire different vehicles to use from. However, they could range from useful to useless at points, basically. The Grasshopper and Ladybug, they're more preferable because they're faster options and quicker to do. The Cockroach and Snail, they're just pretty useless options, honestly, because they go super slow. It's basically easier to use some options than others. It kind of feels unfair, and also for the fact that they were chosen randomly to choose these. However, it's pretty toe-keeping, I'll give it that. Number 43, Snowbrawl. Pretty hard for the one, however, it's pretty toe-keeping, I'll give you that. However, this minigame can last pretty quickly. It can last from somewhere to up to around 20 seconds to as low as 1 in the Super Mario Party Jamboree version. It basically kind of feels a bit short at points. However, it's pretty intense. I like how the single player is given helpers. Not too much, but it's an alright time. Number 42, Dark and Crispy. An alright Bowser minigame. It's not the fact that Bowser's preference, and also the fact that it's dark, is the hardest part. I think it's the fact of trying not to fall off, but that's really not saying much. It's kind of easy to begin with. It's alright, I'll give it that. Number 41, Pit Boss. I'm grouping these minigames together since they're the same level. Either one's too easy or one's too hard. Although I like Pit Boss more since it can become more interesting and pretty frantic because of the fact you don't know where the spikes are going to go. It makes it pretty intense. And also the fact that there could be everyone losing as an option is a pretty cool thing to think of. Number 40, Bonanza. An okay duel minigame as well. It's just simply hurting in the booze. It's kind of easy. That's basically all I can say about this minigame. Next! We're halfway there! Oh! Squidward on a chair! Number 39, Cannonball Fun. Another minigame that has changed in ratings. Another one that went from 4 to 3, basically. This minigame is just alright. It's just basically moving around, trying to hit your opponents. I feel like having 2 cannons is a bit unnecessary. If we're gonna have them both shoot at the same time, you could have had that, instead of basically having one shoot one and then one shooting the other. It's kind of slow. It's alright though. I can respect that. Just barely making it into the top half of the list. Number 38, Memory Lane. Easy, just easy, that's it. It's kind of interesting to see different patterns, and also for the fact that you gotta be pretty careful with where you go. However, besides that, there's pretty much nothing else to this minigame. It's pretty alright. Next! Number 37, Catapult. Pretty much a minigame, all you just do is basically just go up onto a catapult, basically twice, and try to grab as many coins as the 20 up there. Basically, it's just kind of easy to do so anyways, although the computer players, they could be kind of stupid at points. Basically, just kind of an easy minigame, if you want to say so for yourself. Number 36, Motown. Another kind of easy minigame. However, I do like the fact that if you go backwards, you can't mow the lawn. That's a pretty interesting detail, and make sure that it's not too easy. And also for the fact that basically, it's just not really hard to begin with, really. It's kind of easy, and also it's kind of easy to get stuck on points. It's just a simple, easy minigame. I can respect that. Number 35, Stage Fright. A bit of a surprise for the 1 vs 3 minigames, because a lot of them have been 2 or 3 stars, even 1 at points. And this is the exception here, along with 2, maybe 3 extras later on. However, this one kind of feels balanced. The single player has it hard because they have to dodge a lot of rubber balls. However, the team of 3 can accidentally friendly fire each other. They move at different intervals. It basically makes it not too hard on either side. Just an alright minigame. Next! Number 34, Mullet. A minigame that was very close to a 4-star minigame actually. However, night mode absolutely sucks! Because basically day mode, it's pretty easy to do and pretty toe-keeping actually. Because, well, you have to hit a ton of moles from upward, and it's not really too hard in any remark. However, night mode, it just makes it a pain in the ass from the start. Because 1, you have to ground pound, and also the obstacles, they can get pretty much in the way. And also, it's kind of easy to tie. It was pretty close to 4. However, it had to fall to the top of 3, which is just sad. Number 33, Garden Grab. Alright, Let me explain the stupid concept of this minigame, and yet how I like it. You press a button, your partner presses a button, then you press a button, and your partner presses a button, and then again, and again, and again, and again, and then, at the end, it's a button masher at the very end, baby! However, I like this use of the button masher, because basically, it doesn't do it for the full time, and it basically isn't really too hard. It's a pretty simplistic concept, and it's pretty intense. It's one of those few times where button mashers actually work. Yippee! Number 32, Cog Jog. A pretty mixed minigame in terms of what people think of it. For one, people really like it for the fact that it's a pretty complicated platformer. However, people hate it because of how clunky it is, and also for the fact that it's pretty punishing for stupid stuff. I'm on the former of those ends. It's a pretty decent minigame. However, I kinda wish it was a bit more better executed, I would say, because basically, it kind of feels a bit easy at points. It's not really that hard, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It's just kind of alright in most parts. It's decent though, because it's pretty intense. I also like the fact that the gears can actually reverse. Pretty nice, I would say. Number 31, Light Up by Night. I did say in my review for this minigame that the course never changed. However, I was wrong about that. It actually does change. However, I would like to see it basically be a bit more balanced. However, since a lot of the torches, they could be on your side most of the time, which is kind of unbalanced, I would have to say. And also, it's kind of finicky to try to light up a torch. It's kind of finicky. However, it's a decent minigame, and one that can be really intense if both players have 4 torches lit up and they're looking for the final torch. It's a pretty intense minigame for the most part. However, I just kind of wish it was a bit more balanced at points. Number 30, Daft Rats. It's kind of an easier version of Platform Peril. I have to say that right now. It's kind of stupid and lame at points, basically. It can be pretty quick at actually points, though. However, it's pretty toe-keeping, actually. And I do like the simple change of just simply the obstacles. In the day, the obstacles could be Spinies, while in the night, it can be Potaboos. It's a pretty nice change, however, it's kind of decent, and that's all I'm gonna have to say for this minigame. The course really doesn't change at all. Number 29, Sunday Drivers. A pretty simple reaction time minigame, where you have to press the right button at the right time. It would have been like a 3-star on its own, however, the fact that you could beat your record just barely umps it up to a 4. Next! Number 28, Something's Amiss. A pretty simple use of the rumble feature, however, I like it, since it basically gives you extra stuff to do as well. However, because of the fact that basically the trees, they give you a small hint on where the jewel is. Not too big, however, enough that it's acceptable. I like this minigame. It's pretty simple and frantic as well, and just for a search of the jewel. Actually, both players are on 2, found. It basically makes it pretty competitive for the last one. I like it. Moving on. Number 27, Burn Style. A pretty toe-keeping minigame that is basically all about dodging a skewer. That's all I gotta really say. It's just an alright minigame, for the most part though. However, the fact that it's pretty toe-keeping, and also the fact that it gets significantly faster over time, it really adds an element of extreme amount of toe-keeping. It's pretty frantic as well. I really like it for that alone, which basically pumps it up to a 4-star. That's really all I have to say, however I wish it was a free-for-all. Number 26, Slot Trot. Just simply trying to match up what the Lokido has on its slots. So basically, that's basically all this minigame is. However, it's pretty nice and basically can be pretty intense at points. However, the computer players, they can be kind of stupid at points if they're on the complete opposite side of where you need to be. And also for the fact that the accuracy, it's kind of off at points. That's all to this minigame though. It's nice. Number 25, Money Belt. A pretty simple coin minigame that basically involves you being very careful with where you go in this minigame. I kind of understand why it was named X-Ray Payday in Mario Party Superstars since they added another money belt in Mario Party 4. However, but this minigame is just basically simply just be careful with where you go. It can be pretty hard if you don't have too big of a memory, and you gotta be very, very careful at points on which boxes have what inside of them. Besides that though, it's kind of simple. Next! Number 24, Pokey Punch-Out. A simple minigame that involves getting the most of something. You can either go the simple route or just punch all the Pokies, or you can go what I do, punch them, and then until they're at 3, when you just kick jump them, and basically you get all the points out of them when you get the head. it basically becomes pretty creative with what you could do. It's just nothing much else. However, I like it. I actually really like it for how they went with this minigame. Number 23, Search and Destroy. Basically a minigame that is a pretty big surprise for the 1v3s, because 1v3s aren't really that good to begin with. And this is one of the big exceptions. Because Search and Destroy basically is pretty balanced overall, because each player doesn't have too hard of a task to do. And also for the fact that it has a pretty cool way of doing that for the single player, they have to use both control sticks. It's also pretty satisfying to get out of the team of 3, because of how creative this has to go on. It's pretty toe-keeping. I really like it. And there are 2 more 1v3 minigames, spoilers ahead. Number 22, Clean Team. Why do cleaning minigames have to actually be pretty entertaining? Because they are. And also for the fact that this minigame doesn't really take itself too seriously. Just a simple chill minigame, where both players are given one task, and it basically leads to a lot of team cooperation. It's a pretty nice minigame. I really like it. It initially was like a 3-star like 3 years ago. However, looking at it now, it's a pretty good minigame. I don't know why I put it at 3 stars initially, because this minigame does not miss at all. And nothing else besides that. So let's just move on. Number 21, Rocky Road. A minigame that I can really understand made it into top 100 and superstars. It's just basically a lot of cooperation, basically. Basically, you have to punch the boulders. And you gotta be pretty careful not to punch your own teammates, because that can slow you down if you're not careful. Although, you aren't really doing anything while you're inside the car. You could at least do something I wish you did, so like mashing the button, rotating the control stick. It's way easier on a GameCube. But, not really too much of a complaint here. I still like it. Number 20, Stamp by Me. Starting off our top 20 is a battle minigame, surprisingly. There are 2 conveyor belts, one that moves slow and one that moves fast. It basically means that you have to try to time out your stamps pretty carefully, which can lead to a lot of competition. There are up to 27 stamps that you can stamp on. However, it's still competitive besides that. Although, you're pretty likely going to have like one of the conveyors move faster than the other every single time. It most likely could be the same one. However, that doesn't stop this minigame from being very fun. Number 19, Lunar Ticks. A pretty intense timing minigame, I'll have to say that right now. It basically can come down to the wire if both players know what they're doing. All you gotta do is try to have your jetpack land on the landing pad closest to 0. And negative time does count, to let you know. I will say, it is pretty intense. Because basically, you can fool your opponents in multiple cases. And this can make this minigame pretty entertaining to screw up your own rival. Pretty fun minigame, I'll have to say right now. Number 18, Balldozers. One of the most balanced 1v3 minigames. Surprising, I know. Basically, the single player is a small ball to move down a pinball machine, while the team of 3 have a big ball to move down a pinball machine. The first to get their ball down to the slot wins. And yeah, a pretty intense minigame. And also, I do like the fact that basically, you gotta be pretty careful with what would you hit, because that's going to depend on where your ball is gonna go. Although the computer players, they can be stupid at points. That's the one big flaw with this minigame. It's not a big one, but still noteworthy. Number 17, Throw Me a Bone. Basically, guide your chain chomp to the end of the course around obstacles. It's a pretty fun minigame, and also has a ton of replayability to it, for the fact that you could beat your record. And yeah, it basically becomes pretty fun once that comes into play. However, my main problem is that the course never changes. If it did, it would have been a lot more fun, and maybe even a 5-star, maybe even top 10. Number 16, Dusk Till Dawn. The best 1 vs 3 minigame in Mario Party 6. And it's another cleaning minigame, yippee! Wow, cleaning minigames are fun. I'll tell you right now. It kinda turns into a button masher at points. However, it doesn't really mind too much. Although the single player can win a decent amount of times, which is the biggest problem with this minigame. However, it's still pretty frantic and toe-keeping and pretty balanced overall. Next, number 15, Ozone. A pretty intense duel minigame. And that's because it's basically finding the O's in a sea of O's, X's, and nothing. Yeah, that's basically it. Although I kinda do wish the fact that the platform actually did move 90 degrees, which made it harder. It just stays in the same place. It kind of makes itself think that the route has changed. However, it's really not. Although, it can be a pretty frantic chase for that final O, I'll tell you right now. Number 14, Circuit Maximas. A pretty intense racing minigame, I will tell you right now. It's really nothing too much. You could damage boost yourself through the amps, which kind of makes this one a bit too easy. However, you can beat your record, which makes the entire thing worth it. Nothing else to say there. Next. Number 13, Smash Dance. Another very toe-keeping minigame, go figure! However, this one is just basically getting the most of something, and can get pretty intense. It comes less of basically trying to get yourself to win, and making sure your opponents lose. However, the ground pound time, basically, when someone gets ground pounded on, lasts way too long. It lasts like 5 seconds. That's way too long in a 30-second long minigame. But not really much else there. Pretty simple and pretty frantic. I like it. Number 12, Hyper Sniper. Basically just trying to get the most points by hitting stuff. The larger the point total, the smaller the tile, which basically makes things a lot harder to actually time, which basically makes you have to think pretty difficultly if you want to get some high pointage. And basically, what I found out with the 100-point margins is basically to start shooting right above them, and you'll basically hit it every time. Kind of easy to time, yet there are those Bowser marks. They can basically get rid of all your points, which basically makes them a pretty one thing that you want to avoid. Yeah, it's a pretty nice minigame. Actually, it's very, very good. I would like to see it again in Switch 2 Mario Party. Number 11, Asteroid Rage. The first minigame in alphabetical order for Mario Party 6, and basically the one that started it all. I will say, the fact that it's the first, it did really good for that matter of fact. It's pretty simple. You gotta move between lanes to avoid asteroids. Although there are points where it can become a bit clunky at points. However, that really isn't too much of a complaint, because it is still an extremely good minigame that you have to be pretty careful while playing. I like that sort of skill. It really makes for a pretty competitive minigame overall. Next, number 10, Jump the Gun. I was deciding between this, Hyper Sniper, and Asteroid Rage for which one should be taking the number 10 spot. I chose this one because it's the most simple fun, and also pretty competitive. The fact that basically one player has to shoot bullet bills to make platforms while the other has to jump on them and make it to the end. It requires a lot of team skill and can get pretty intense. And yeah, basically that's it. It's a pretty good minigame, and I really want to see it make it into another Mario Party. Actually, it did! Super Mario Party Jamboree, surprisingly enough. Although it is kind of lackluster compared to the initial. However, this is our last in the 4-star category, so I'm not complaining. Number 9, Catch You Later. Trying to get the mailman's mail and return it to him. A pretty simple concept, yet very, very frantic. And also I like how hard it is because of the fact that the Shy Guy, they do not stay in one place the whole time. It can get pretty competitive at points. Although it's kind of easy to know when the gold letters do drop down. And that can kind of guarantee the win at some points. However, I'm not complaining at all, because this minigame is great. I just like the fact that basically, the arena doesn't have to be too complex. And also for the fact that you actually have to pick up the letters, you move over them. It makes it pretty intense, and I really want to see this in another Mario Party outside of the top 100 in Superstars. Number 8, Granite Getaway. Another minigame involving boulders. Nice. And this one, it's basically a survival minigame like Indiana Jones. Basically, do not get crushed by the boulder. Although, I don't know if the obstacles change. However, it's pretty toe-keeping though. And it's one of those survival minigames that I want to see over and over again. And I also like the fact that this actually made it into Super Mario Party Jamboree. Although in that version, they make it the last person to survive minigame, even though the original could have multiple winners and even potential draw. Why? However, I still love the original despite that. Number 7, Pixel Perfect. One where you actually work with your partner. An absolute shock for these 2v2 minigames. Because, well, the 2v2 minigames are good, however, a lot of them could have been free-for-alls. Although, this is one of the big exceptions. Because basically, you and your partner have to try to make a pattern that is shown to you. Even if it's a first 2, I really don't mind that since it can be pretty competitive. Although it tries to treat itself as something that's pretty relaxing, it really isn't at all. And also, you gotta be pretty careful with what you do, because basically, it can either mess you up the entire game, or basically just waste time, basically the best way to say. It's a great minigame, and I want to see in a future Switch to Mario Party. Number 6, note to self. Whoop-de-doo, another simple concept yet intense fun. Hooray! Like we've seen many times. This time you're basically with notes with the other 3 players, and you gotta try to hit the notes as much as you can. The twist though is that they can move depending on where you hit them, which is super interesting. And just basically leads for a lot of fun. They don't just stay in the same place the whole time. That would be boring! They basically move around all over the place, and they can bounce off of other notes. It basically leads to a very, very intense 30 seconds, and I love it. Number 5, Control Stick. The best battle minigame overall, and this time, it uses the yellow control stick. Wow! Very surprising! Yeah, that actually is pretty surprising, because it's barely used. And they do a great job of using it for reaction time instead of basically using it for one of the overall controls. It's basically used when it needs to be used. Very, very nice. I love it. It basically starts off pretty slow at points, but then once it goes fast, it goes fast. And if both players know what they're doing, well, most of them do, that basically can lead to a very, 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 very intense, like, however long it goes on for. It can go on for very long. The reaction time, though, it can get very intense at points. It's a great minigame. It easily deserves a spot in Superstars instead of some others. Number 4, T-5, the best duel minigame by a long shot. And that's kind of sad because we got 15 entire duel minigames in this Mario Party, and this is the only one that turned out this good, which is just very, very sad if you think about it. However, this minigame is another one that focuses on reaction time. And just like Control Stick, it basically eases it into you until it goes super fast at points. And I love it for the fact that basically it requires skill, and also for the fact it makes sense for a duel minigame of all things. And yeah, battle and duel minigames are the perfect minigames for this type of stuff. Not luck-based minigames, but reaction time minigames. It perfectly works. And also for the fact that basically it doesn't really have to change in any shape or form. It perfectly works in the number 4 spot, but falls short of the top 3. Number 3, Lift Leapers. Basically a minigame that involves platforming. Something we never see in another Mario Party. Even 21 years later, it still hasn't been put into another Mario Party. Why? It's a great concept. I love it for that. It basically becomes very intense at points, and also is very replayable when you try to beat your record. It's very creative, and it should have been emulated into another Mario Party. In any shape or form. I don't know which way it should be emulated into, although it should have been emulated into an actual minigame. Well, obviously. But still, this minigame is an absolutely amazing one. The only minor, and I mean very minor problem, is that the course never changes, which is kind of sad, but really doesn't pull down this minigame too much, as it's still a very, very original concept. I love it for that. Number 2, this one came down to the absolute wire. One minigame that is a platforming minigame that has a completely different version of night mode, and one that basically takes button mashers to the extreme. It's a very hard choice, am I right? However, I decided on what number 2 should be, and I decided with a lot of thinking that it would be What Goes Up. And yeah, this minigame obviously deserves the number 2 spot, because basically, for one, it's an original platformer that basically involves you getting as high as you possibly can. Already works off of its predecessor, Leaf Leap, perfectly well. Although in night mode, you basically have to fall. How can I say more than that is very, very creative? I love that. That should have been in another Mario Party, about falling. Yeah, take notes. I'll tell you right now. However, I still think it just barely misses out on the number 1 spot because it can end pretty quickly. And really, it doesn't involve too much strategy at points. Yeah, kind of sad, but number 2 is still amazing. Number 1, Snow World. Yeah, this was an obvious number 1. For one, it really takes one thing that is basically not really well done in minigames, and basically uses it perfectly by not doing it one button at a time, by basically doing 4 buttons in a sequence as fast as you can. That is super creative. And yeah, that basically works perfectly. It deserved its spot in the top 100 in Superstars. It's really iconic and I love it. Although it can be a bit easy to get off sequence, and also emulating this onto a GameCube controller is a bit clunky. However, I don't really matter about that at all. I still love this minigame with all my heart. And basically that's all I can say about this minigame. Not really too much else. Really easily deserves the top spot for Mario Party 6. Congrats, Snow World. Well, we've made it to the end of the video. Yeah, this took a long time to make. It took me weeks to make, because basically there were a ton of things to this video. Like, I had to do so many different things. I spent days working on the audio, days putting in the footage for this video. I even had to record entirely new footage and reuse footage from like 2022 or 23. Yeah, footage from that long ago. However though, this was still an awesome video to make. And also, I want to give a nice thank you to a few people. I want to thank me and 8-Ball, and I forgot his name, very sorry, for basically commenting on my videos and basically showing a ton of support for them. I really respect that a ton. For the review series, I want to give some respect to Mushroom Fortress, because they're the content creators that basically came up with the idea of it, and I decided I want to do it for myself. Unfortunately, Mushroom Fortress is completely inactive. They've been so for over 2 years. And finally, Random Vids for basically being around for the Mario Party 6 review number 59, Snow World. Oh yeah, I forgot, Slim Kirby. He was the inspiration for this video specifically. And yeah, I want to give a thank you to all those people, even though they'll probably never acknowledge this video's existence. However, you may be wondering, will I be stopping with Mario Parties for good? No. Honestly, not even close. Heck, the footage you're seeing right now is currently a sneak peek for the Mario Party 6 Decathlon video. And yeah, that'll be fun to watch. However, yeah, for now, it'll be probably a few months before you see anything Mario Party related. And also, I want you guys to vote on which Mario Party I should do next. So yeah, type it in the letter or square brackets as a comment below. A for Mario Party 5, B for Mario Party 7, and C for Mario Party 8. Maybe asking, why not Mario Party 4?
Well, I don't have it as of this video.
Yeah, basically, those are the only 3 options for now. More will be added in the future. And yeah, for now, that's basically it. And whichever one gets the most votes, I'll do next. However, you probably won't be seeing it for another few months. Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate, however, it's kind of the truth at this point. However, I will not be stopping for spring just yet. Yeah, but for April, this is it. This is the last video of April. Anyways, I'll see you guys in BFB Viewer Voting 3 show, episode 1. Whenever it finishes. See you guys.